Hey guys, so for you Harry Potter fans, I'm going to be building a Hogwarts Legacy PC today. So this PC is actually for my wife. My wife has really gotten into it, maybe even a little too much, but it's okay. I still love her. And she's been using my personal PC to play Hogwarts. Now, I don't mind that she uses it. It's just that my PC is kind of bulky and she plays in the living room on the TV that we have in there. So I wanted to build her something a little smaller with the parts that I already had, but that is still very capable of playing the game. So I'll talk about what parts I went with, why I went with them. We'll do some benchmarks, we'll do some gaming just to see how decent of a computer this is. Hopefully my wife is happy with it, and it's going to be really sicko mode. So before we get started, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. And every video I post will be more sicko mode than the last. All right, let's get to it. So first off, let's go over the parts that I used. So the processor I used is the Ryzen 5 5500 in a cute little Gigabyte B550 Aorus Pro motherboard. Cooling it with the NZXT Kraken 120. It's a single fan radiator liquid cooler. I did go with 32 gigs of RAM because at times when my wife was playing, she was using about 19 gigs of RAM. It's just Corsair Vengeance RAM with a little bit of RGB. Paired it with the Founders Edition RTX 4060 Ti. The SSD is a Samsung 970 EVO 500 gigs. And it's all inside of the NZXT 210 case. I've actually had this case for about 4 years now. It was just kind of sitting around. Figured that it would be a perfect case for this little build. The first test that I ran was the Cinebench test, just to test out the processor. Once again, the Ryzen 5 5500 impresses me. Impressive. Most impressive. In single core performance, it's able to beat out other processors like the Ryzen 5 3600X, as well as the i5 10600K. And it's the same story when it comes to multi-core performance. This processor is only $100 right now, and honestly, this is the best budget CPU you can buy for gaming right now in 2023. Like, for real. For real. So you could say, so far, the build's pretty decent. And then the first game we're gonna test is actually Hogwarts Legacy. One thing to note, I'm aiming for 60 frames per second. Now my wife plays on a Sony 4K OLED TV in the living room. This model actually doesn't support 120 Hertz. It's stuck at 60 Hertz at 4K. So 60 frames per second is really what I'm aiming for. At 1440p, I was able to exceed that with ultra settings. Super smooth, kind of like baby's butt cheeks. Now this is actually me playing. Me and my wife have very different ways we play this game. I have no idea what I'm doing, and she knows exactly what to do. You need to leave. Now her footage is actually in 4K, and forgive me for not making the FPS counter bigger, I forgot. But I was hitting over 60 frames per second consistently. She told me it looked good and she was happy. So mission accomplished, video's over. Just kidding. And once again, I'm very impressed with the Ryzen 5 5500. It doesn't appear to be a bottleneck because I'm getting very similar FPS to my personal build with an i7 10700K when it's paired with the 4060 Ti as well. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I said I'm going to use parts that I already have lying around. This wasn't going to be I'm going to start from scratch. I'm just going to use parts that I previously had on other builds, and I'll see what I can come up with. The only thing I did buy though was the RAM. I needed 2 6 of 16 because all I had was 8s. And there's only 2 slots on this board, and if my math is correct, that's only 16.
He's too young for you, bro! You right to jail.
No way, no. Most of the games I've been playing really only need 16 gigs, but this game needs 32. But anyways, the next game I ran was the Shadow of the Tomb Raider benchmark. Now this game is a very CPU dependent game, so I was concerned if the Ryzen 5 5500 was going to be a bottleneck. It actually performed pretty decent, except whenever there was a lot of detail in the shot, you saw the FPS drop below 60. I was playing at 1440p ultra settings. Overall, it did average over 67 frames per second, and all I wanted was over 60 FPS, so that's just fine. Then the next test I ran was Cyberpunk. So it's high settings with medium ray tracing on. Now, Cyberpunk is a very graphically demanding game. This PC was handling it okay. Now, I would recommend you turn down some of the settings to maybe medium settings if you're wanting that buttery smooth gameplay. But overall, during the benchmark, it did average 55 frames per second, which is kind of below what you want. I usually aim for 60 frames per second, so just turn down some of the settings and you should be able to hit that no problem. And then I ran the Red Dead Redemption test. 1440p, I didn't really adjust any of the settings, they were already set to high. These were the same settings I used when I was testing the i7 9700K. Gameplay was pretty decent, there was no real complaints. Overall I averaged about 75 frames per second, so it's good. And then the final game I ran was GTA 5. This is a 10-year-old game, so my FPS was over 60 frames per second at 1440p ultra settings. What's weird though is that my 3060 Ti gives me better FPS than the 4060 Ti with the same settings, but it's whatever, she's not really going to be playing this game. It was a nice day at the beach though.
It was at this moment that she knew. She fucked up.
And that guy's not following the laws of physics. But anyways, now after all those tests, after all that gaming, what does this all mean? I know this was meant for Hogwarts Legacy, I just wanted to test it out just to see how capable this PC was. But overall I would say it's a pretty decent little build. Open world games, or games that are just more CPU heavy like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Red Dead Redemption 2, the CPU did a decent job. It may bottleneck your GPU if you're comparing it to like an i5 13600K, but the CPU still held its own. I wouldn't say in Hogwarts that it was actually a bottleneck. It ran it pretty smooth, and I was able to get 60 frames per second at ultra settings at 4K resolutions. And that's really all I care about. If there's other games that it struggles with, I really don't care.
I don't care.
This is meant just to play Hogwarts. I'm pretty sure my wife is gonna be pretty happy. Hopefully. If you are gonna play other games, I do recommend you go maybe with a Ryzen 5 5600X. I don't think you need to go much higher than that. If you're still rocking the AM4 socket type, the Ryzen 5 5500 is still a solid entry-level CPU. It's not a bad way to go. Now I am interested in the 5600X 3D, but it's an exclusive with Micro Center, and I don't live near a Micro Center, so I'd have to drive like 2.5 hours to Houston. And it uses 105 watts. So it's going from 65 watts to 105 watts in a small little build. Not sure if that's the best thing to do. My cooler is not the best. The Ryzen 5 5500 doesn't get too hot. Overall, this little build is a low power PC, so heat should never really be an issue. I think playing in ultra settings is really just something that I wanted. I wanted to make sure she could play in those settings. I know she said she's fine with it not being the highest settings, but I'm like, that's not very Sicko Mode, Molly. Overall, super happy with the way it came out, especially because the only thing I had to buy was RAM. But thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comments below. Please like and subscribe if you like this content. Each video I put out will be more Sicko Mode than the last. And like always, have a Sicko Mode day.